Billionaire CEO arrives with his fiancée, then sees his ex-graduate holding a child that looks just like him. Adrian Voss had learned to walk into rooms like he owned them. It wasn't arrogance, or rather it had started as arrogance and become something more practiced, more deliberate. The way a nervous habit becomes a signature. He was 34 years old, founder and CEO of Voss Capital Group, worth approximately $2.7 billion on a good day, and slightly less on a bad one, and he had spent the better part of a decade cultivating the particular quality of presence that made photographers turn and rooms quiet when he entered. He walked the red carpet of the Hartwell University Alumni Gala beside Serena Cole, his fiancée of 4 months, stunning in gold, the kind of woman who had been photographed since she was 19, and had learned to make cameras feel like mirrors, and he did what he always did in these rooms. He scanned. It was a habit from his early days, when he'd walked into investor meetings with nothing but a pitch deck and the certainty that he needed to identify every variable in the room within the first 30 seconds. Old habit. Never fully left. He scanned the grand ballroom, the chandeliers, the crowd, the graduates in their academic gowns clustered near the far entrance, and then he stopped scanning because his eyes had found something that made every other variable in the room disappear completely. A woman in a black sequin dress, standing at the edge of the red carpet, half turned away from him, holding the hand of a small boy in a miniature tuxedo, a boy with dark brown hair and a jaw that Adrian recognized the way you recognize your own reflection, not because you're looking for it, but because some things are simply unavoidable. Adrian Voss, who had learned to walk into rooms like he owned them, stopped walking. Her name was Valentina Cruz, and she had not planned to be here tonight. She had been invited because her research, 3 years of doctoral work on sustainable urban infrastructure financing, had won the university's highest graduate research award, the kind that came with a plaque and a ceremony and an invitation to an event she would normally have found a reason to decline. She had come because her advisor had told her firmly that declining this particular award at this particular event would be professionally foolish. She had come because her son, Matteo, had asked if he could wear his little suit. She had come because sometimes the things you spend years avoiding find you anyway, and it is better to meet them standing up. She had known Adrian might be here. He was a prominent alumnus. His name was on a building. Of course he might be here. She had told herself she was prepared. Standing at the edge of the carpet, watching him walk in with a woman who looked like she had been specifically designed to stand beside someone like Adrian Voss, Valentina understood that she had not been prepared at all. Matteo tugged her hand. "Mama, that man stopped." "I see that," she said quietly. "He's looking at us." "I know, baby. Do you know him?" Valentina looked at her son, 5 years old, dark hair, the jaw she saw every morning, and a face she loved more completely than she had known it was possible to love anything. And then she looked back at Adrian, who was still standing 30 feet away with his fiancée's hand in his, and an expression she had never seen on him before. Not in 2 years of loving him. Not in the single conversation that had ended everything. Not in the 5 years of silence that followed. She had never seen Adrian Voss look afraid. A long time ago, she said to Matteo, "Come on, let's find our table." They had met at this university. That was the particular cruelty of the venue. Every corner of the Hartwell ballroom contained some version of a memory Valentina had spent 5 years carefully filing away. She had been a first-year doctoral student. He had been a guest lecturer, young, already successful, already magnetic in the way that people who are building something real become magnetic. She had asked him a question after his talk that had made him pause mid-stride and turn back and look at her with the expression of someone who had not expected to be genuinely challenged. They had talked for an hour after everyone else left. Then they had gotten coffee. Then they had, over the following months, fallen into something that neither of them had planned and both of them had felt entirely. For 2 years it had been real. She was certain of that much. Whatever came after, the 2 years were real. What came after was a conversation she still replayed sometimes. In the particular insomnia of 3 a.m., when the mind goes looking for the things it usually avoids. Adrian's company had hit a critical growth phase. Investors were involved. Decisions were being made about image, about optics, about the kind of life a man building a public-facing empire needed to project. He hadn't said any of that directly. He hadn't needed to. What he had said, in the kitchen of his apartment on a Sunday morning, was, "I think we want different things." She had been 3 weeks pregnant. She didn't know it yet. She had found out 6 days later. Had called his number twice and gotten voicemail. Had written a message and deleted it. Had written it again and deleted it again. Had decided, in the end, that a man who ended things in a kitchen on a Sunday morning with "I think we want different things" had made his priorities sufficiently clear. She had raised Matteo alone. Well, not entirely alone, her mother, her sister, a community of people who had shown up in the ways that mattered, but alone in the specific sense of the word, without Adrian, without telling Adrian. She had questioned that decision approximately every 6 months for 5 years, always reached the same conclusion: he had chosen. She had respected the choice. That was the end of it. Until tonight, Adrian excused himself from Serena with a sentence he couldn't reconstruct afterward, something about a colleague, something that sounded plausible, and crossed the ballroom with the particular focus of a man who has identified the only variable that currently matters. Valentina was seated at a table near the awards platform. The boy was beside her, eating something from a small plate with the focused contentment of a child who has been promised good behavior in exchange for the suit, and is honoring his end of the deal. Adrian stood at the edge of the table. "Valentina," he said. She looked up. Her expression was composed. He recognized the composure. She had always been the most genuinely composed person he had ever known, which had been one of the things about her that made everything else feel louder in comparison. "Adrian," she said. He looked at the boy. The boy looked back at him with dark eyes that were Adrian's mind processed this with the particular disorientation of encountering something simultaneously impossible and completely obvious: his own eyes, his mother's nose, his own jaw. 5 years old, maybe. The age was right. The timing was right. He was doing the arithmetic in real time, and the arithmetic had only one answer. "What's your name?" he asked the boy. His voice came out steadier than he expected. The boy looked at Valentina. She gave him a small nod. "Matteo," the boy said. "Matteo Cruz." "How old are you, Matteo?" 5. He held up 5 fingers, apparently feeling the number required illustration. "I'll be 6 in April." Adrian stood up from where he had crouched to eye level with the boy. He looked at Valentina. "Can we talk?" he said. "This isn't the time or place, Valentina." His voice was quiet, not aggressive, not accusatory, something more stripped down than either of those things. "Please." She studied him for a moment. Then she said something to Matteo. "Stay here, I'll be right back. The dessert is coming," and stood and walked with Adrian to the corridor beside the ballroom. The corridor was empty and relatively quiet, the sound of the gala muffled behind the heavy doors. They stood facing each other for the first time in 5 years. "He's mine," Adrian said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Valentina said, a silence that contained approximately 5 years of things neither of them had said. "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked at him steadily. "You ended things, clearly, finally. I found out 6 days later. I called twice. You didn't answer." "I didn't know you were calling about you didn't answer," she said again, simply. That was an answer too. He absorbed this, ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized from years ago, the one that meant he was processing something faster than he was comfortable with. "I was wrong," he said. "When I ended it, he stopped. Started again. I was afraid of what it would cost me, building the company, having something real that I might fail at. It was cowardice dressed up as practicality, and I have known that for 5 years, and He stopped again. "That's not an excuse. I'm not offering it as an excuse." Valentina watched him. "What are you offering it as?" "An explanation, and an apology." He met her eyes. "I'm sorry, Valentina, for the Sunday morning, for not answering, for 5 years of..." He gestured, unable to find words adequate to the scope of it. She was quiet for a moment. "He's a wonderful boy," she said. Her voice had shifted, not softer exactly, but different. "He's funny and kind, and he already understands more about how the world works than most adults I know. You have missed 5 years of something extraordinary, and I am..." She paused. "I am sorry for that. Genuinely. However angry I was, I never wanted to take that from you." "What do we do?" he said. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But not tonight. Tonight I have an award to collect, and my son is waiting for dessert, and your fiancé is in that room wondering where you are." She looked at him directly. "Whatever comes next needs to be about Matteo. Only about Matteo. Are you clear on that?" "Yes," he said immediately. "Then call me tomorrow." She reached into her small clutch and produced a card. "Clean, professional, Dr. Valentina Cruz," her university contact information. She held it out. He took it, She turned to go back to the ballroom, then paused. He likes dinosaurs, she said without turning around. Specifically the Cretaceous period. He'll tell you everything he knows if you let him. It takes a while. A pause, just so you know. She walked back through the doors. Adrian stood in the corridor holding her card and thought about 5 years of Sunday mornings he hadn't been there for. 5 years of dinosaur facts he hadn't heard. 5 years of a face that was somehow both entirely new and completely familiar. He thought about the boy's 5 fingers held up with complete earnestness. He went back into the ballroom, sat beside Serena, watched from across the room as Valentina Cruz walked to the awards platform and accepted her plaque with the same composed dignity she had brought to every room he had ever watched her enter. And then, because some decisions don't require a night to sleep on, because some things become clear in corridors outside ballrooms in ways they never become clear in boardrooms, he made a call to the most honest part of himself that he had been avoiding for 5 years. He called it. It answered. He had a son. Everything else, the company, the carpet, the woman beside him in gold, was detail. Mateo Cruz had dark eyes and a miniature tuxedo and 5 fingers that he held up when he wanted to make a point. And starting tomorrow, his father was going to show up, completely, honestly, without excuses, the way he should have been showing up all along. The end.